praised Theobald in his own good opinion. Dull as he was, he had no small share of quiet self-approbation. He admired himself for his university distinction, for the purity of his life. I said of him once that if he had only a better temper he would be as innocent as a new-laid egg, and for his unimpeachable integrity in money matters. He did not despair for advancement in the church when he had once got a living, and of course it was within the bounds of possibility that he might one day become a bishop, and Christina said she felt convinced that this would ultimately be the case. As was natural for the daughter and intended wife of a clergyman, Christina's thoughts ran much upon religion, and she was resolved that even though an exalted position in this world were denied to her and Theobald, their virtues should be fully appreciated in the next. Her religious opinions coincided absolutely with Theobald's own, and many a conversation did she have with him about the glory of God and the completeness with which they would devote themselves to it, as soon as Theobald had got his living and they were married. So certain was she of the great results which would then ensue that she wondered at times at the blindness shown by Providence towards its own truest interests in not killing off the rectors who stood between Theobald and his living a little faster. In those days people believed with a simple downrightness which I do not observe among educated men and women now. It had never so much as crossed Theobald's mind to doubt the literal accuracy of any syllable in the Bible. He had never seen any book in which this was disputed, nor met anyone who doubted it. True, there was just a little scare about geology, but there was nothing in it. If it was said that God made the world in 6 days, why he made it in 6 days, neither in more nor less. If it was said that he put Adam to sleep, took out one of his ribs and made a woman of it, why it was so as a matter of course. He, Adam, went to sleep as it might be himself, Theobald Pontifex, in a garden as it might be the garden at Crampsford Rectory, during the summer months when it was so pretty, only that it was larger, and had some tame wild animals in it. Then God came up to him, as it might be Mr. Allaby or his father, dexterously took out one of his ribs without waking him, and miraculously healed the wound so that no trace of the operation remained. Finally, God had taken the rib perhaps into the greenhouse, and had turned it into just such another young woman as Christina. That was how it was done. There was neither difficulty nor shadow of difficulty about the matter. Could not God do anything he liked? And had he not in his own inspired book told us that he had done this? This was the average attitude of fairly educated young men and women towards the Mosaic cosmogony, 50, 40, or even 20 years ago. The combating of infidelity, therefore, offered little scope for enterprising young clergymen, nor had the Church awakened to the activity which she has since displayed among the poor in our large towns. These were then left, almost without an effort at resistance or co-operation, to the labours of those who had succeeded Wesley. Missionary work, indeed, in heathen countries was being carried on with some energy, but Theobald did not feel any call to be a missionary. Christina suggested this to him more than once, and assured him of the unspeakable happiness it would be to her to be the wife of a missionary, and to share his dangers. She and Theobald might even be martyred. Of course they would be martyred simultaneously, and martyrdom many years hence, as regarded from the arbour in the rectory garden, was not painful. It would ensure them a glorious future in the next world, and at any rate posthumous renown in this, even if they were not miraculously restored to life again, and such things had happened ere now in the case of martyrs. Theobald, however, had not been kindled by Christina's enthusiasm, so she fell back upon the Church of Rome, an enemy more dangerous, if possible, than paganism itself. A combat with Romanism might even yet win for her and Theobald the crown of martyrdom. True, the Church of Rome was tolerably quiet just then, but it was the calm before the storm, of this she was assured, with a conviction deeper than she could have attained by any argument founded upon mere reason. "We, dearest Theobald," she exclaimed, "will be ever faithful. We will stand firm and support one another even in the hour of death itself. God in his mercy may spare us from being burnt alive. He may or may not do so. O Lord," and she turned her eyes prayerfully to heaven, "spare my Theobald, or grant that he may be beheaded." "My dearest," said Theobald gravely, "do not let us agitate ourselves unduly. If the hour of trial comes we shall be best prepared to meet it by having led a quiet, unobtrusive life of self-denial and devotion to God's glory. Such a life let us pray God that it may please him to enable us to pray that we may lead." "Dearest Theobald," exclaimed Christina, drying the tears that had gathered in her eyes, "you are always, always right. Let us be self-denying, pure, upright, truthful in word and deed." She clasped her hands and looked up to heaven as she spoke. "Dearest," rejoined her lover, "we have ever hitherto endeavored to be all these things. We have not been worldly people. Let us watch and pray that we may so continue to the end." The moon had risen and the arbor was getting damp, so they adjourned further aspirations for a more convenient season. At other times Christina pictured herself and Theobald as braving the scorn of almost every human being in the achievement of some mighty task which should redound to the honor of her Redeemer. She could face anything for this. But always toward the end of her vision there came a little coronation scene high up in the golden regions of the heavens, and a diadem was set upon her head by the Son of Man himself, amid the host of angels and archangels who looked on with envy and admiration, and here even Theobald himself was out of it. If there could be such a thing as the mammon of righteousness, Christina would have assuredly made friends with it. Her papa and mamma were very estimable people, and would in the course of time receive heavenly mansions in which they would be exceedingly comfortable. So doubtless would her sisters. So perhaps even might her brothers. But for herself she felt that a higher destiny was preparing, which it was her duty never to lose sight of. The first step towards it would be her marriage with Theobald. In spite, however, of these flights of religious romanticism, Christina was a good-tempered, kindly-natured girl enough, who, if she had married a sensible layman, we will say a hotel-keeper, would have developed into a good landlady, and been deservedly popular with her guests. Such was Theobald's engaged life. Many a little present passed between the pair, and many a small surprise did they prepare pleasantly for one another. They never quarrelled, and neither of them ever flirted with anyone else. Mrs. Allaby and his future sisters-in-law idolized Theobald, in spite of its being impossible to get another deacon to come and be played for as long as Theobald was able to help Mr. Allaby, which now of course he did free gratis and for nothing. Two of the sisters, however, did manage to find husbands before Christina was actually married, and on each occasion Theobald played the part of decoy elephant. In the end only 2 out of the 7 daughters remained single. After 3 or 4 years old Mr. Pontifex became accustomed to his son's engagement, and looked upon it as among the things which had now a prescriptive right to toleration. In the spring of 1831, more than 5 years after Theobald had first walked over to Crampsford, one of the best livings in the gift of the college unexpectedly fell vacant, and was for various reasons declined by the 2 fellows senior to Theobald, who might each have been expected to take it. The living was then offered to, and of course accepted, by Theobald, being in value not less than £500 a year, with a suitable house and garden. Old Mr. Pontifex then came down more handsomely than was expected, and settled £10,000 on his son and daughter-in-law for life, with remainder to such of their issue as they might appoint. In the month of July, 1831, Theobald and Christina became man and